Numbers chapter 25 is where we are at this morning, and we've got some main divisions for you, of course. There are 4 of them in Numbers chapter 25. The first one, as you can see, is harlotry. What a thing to talk about on a Sunday morning. Harlotry or prostitution. And then there is a hanging that takes place. Hanging, but then we will see a hero in a young man named Phinehas. And then there is harassment at the end. God is, really the children of Israel are harassing somebody, which we'll see, but it's actually ordained by God. God tells them to do that. So we'll get to all of those this morning. 18 verses we will cover before we leave today. And let's go ahead and get into the first section, which is verses 1 through 3 on harlotry, and find out what it is that's going on. Now, you may remember real quickly that Balaam has been trying to curse the people, the children of Israel. It didn't work. He tried a few times. It never worked because God would not curse his people. And so this is the aftermath, and we will actually find out later on that Balaam was involved in this even. And we'll find out how later on, but we'll learn together as we go through these chapters. But harlotry here in verse 1 begins with the women. Now Israel remained in Acacia Grove. They remained in that area where they had been. And the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. Now, why with the women of Moab? Because they were in the area of Moab. This is how it all began. They were traveling through on their way to the promised land. God is leading them. And then they stopped in the area of Moab. And the king Balak of Moab, he's the king of Moab, he said, hey, we don't want these people here. He called Balaam, this religious man, this so-called prophet, and he says, hey, I want you to curse the people for us. Get these people out of here. We do not want them near us. And so they're near the Moabites. And so now Israel remained in Acacia Grove, and the people began to commit harlotry with the women of Moab. And so it says there that, verse 2, they invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. So Israel was joined to Baal of Peor, and the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. So we see it move real quickly from the women to their worship. Now the situation is this. The situation is that the men of Israel got mixed up with the Moabite women. And they got into sexual relationships with the women. That's where the harlotry takes place. Yes, it was on yes, it was the women of Moab, but the bigger problem, and that was a problem, but the bigger problem was that the Israelites, God's people, were getting involved in this. So it wasn't necessarily the women from the Israelites that were getting involved in it, although it seems to imply that everybody was getting involved in it, but it was actually the men. And then after that, it evolved into the worship. Now, for those of you that are not aware, this same thing happened with the wisest man that ever lived. Anybody who knows that? Anybody know who that is? Who is it? Solomon. Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived. He had hundreds of wives or hundreds of women, and those women were idolatrous women. And though he was the wisest man that ever lived, eventually at the end of his life, they drew his heart away from God, or at least to the idols. And we find that he was there taking part in the idolatry also. This is a way to draw people away from the Lord. And certainly I cannot pass this up, right, without talking about relationships. And how relationships can be very dangerous and draw us away from the Lord. We've got to be very careful with that. It may be a friendship that is discouraging to your relationship with the Lord. They may not come outright and just say, hey, let's be friends, and I'd just like to see if I can get you to worship an idol and not God. It doesn't ever come about that way. It comes subtly. hey, listen, let's hang out. Okay, yeah, and you start to hang out, and this bond is formed with this individual, with this friend, and then eventually it's, hey, can you go with me? I'm going to Magic Mountain. Oh yeah, I'd love to go to Magic Mountain. When you going? Oh, we're going on Sunday. Oh, I normally go to church. Oh, come on, it's not that big a deal. It's just one day. I mean, what? Is God going to be mad at you? Oh, no, I guess not. I guess not. God's not going to be mad at me. He forgives. I guess he'll be okay. Yeah, that's right. And we go. But what happens is making that that choice that one time, it makes it easier. We compromise the first time. It makes it easier to compromise the second time. And then a little bit easier the third and the fourth and the fifth. And, before you know it, we can find ourselves having been drawn away. And we go, man, how did this happen? You're scratching your head. How did this happen? Trace that back and find out, oh, it was when I got involved in this relationship. And it wasn't the friend's fault. It's our fault. We knew better. We should have just made our stand. Yeah, I'd love to go to Magic Mountain, but I can't go on Sunday. Or I can go on Sunday afternoon. Whatever your commitment is, you say, you know what, I'm committed to this. I want to be there on Sundays or Wednesdays or whatever your commitment is. And so we've got to be careful, but it becomes even more dangerous when the relationship is a romantic relationship. We can oftentimes find ourselves missionary dating. We know what missionary dating is, right? You know what? I hooked up with this guy. I hooked up with this girl. Are they Christian? Well, no, they're not Christian yet. But I'm on mission. Pastor Chris is always telling us to be on mission. And this person's not saved yet, but he or she is really hot. And so I am going to bring this person to the Lord. And we may set about, I'm going to invite you and, bring you, I'm going to invite you to church. And it may be that they might actually come to church. You might find, oh yeah, I go to church. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Yeah. But you may find that they begin to draw you away. Imagine that I had one of these chairs up here. And imagine that I stood on the chair, and I'm a pretty tough guy. You can tell that, right? I don't have to tell you that. Muscles and all that kind of stuff. But let's say that I'm standing on top of the chair, and we take one of you young ladies, who's here. Maybe we ask Jada to come up or something. And what we do is, let's say that Jada and we grab hands, man. We lock hands. Okay? And let's say that I try to pull Jada up on that chair while Jada's trying to pull me down. Now, you can see Jada and I, side by side. You go, no. You, Pastor Chris, you far outweigh her, But let's say that I'm trying to pull her up. There's going to be a fight, a struggle, and I would be willing to bet that it's going to be way easier for her to pull me down off the chair than it is for me to pull her up on the chair. And that's the way that relationships can work. You may find that, you're a strong Christian. And, you've got your eyes on the Lord, man, and you love the Lord, and you've got a good relationship with the Lord. You're involved in church, and you worship, and you go to the events, and, you're making the effort, and you're drawing close to the Lord. Your spiritual life, you're going stronger and stronger. And you may find that somebody comes along who looks really, really cute and smells good and dresses well, and, they've got soft skin and, all of those, great hair and, all of those things. And you may find that it's easier for them to pull you down than it is for you to pull them up. Missionary dating in the Bible is not really a thing, that's... get them saved first. Oh, but they're so cute. If I don't snatch them up, somebody else might. Listen, it's not worth it. It is not worth it. Solomon, the wisest man that ever lived, couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle it. But it's funny, because we'll go, I know Solomon, wisest man that ever lived. Godly, blessed by the Lord. He couldn't handle it, but I can. Right? We're fooling ourselves. And so you and I have got to be careful in those situations, circumstances, whether they be friendships or romantic relationships. We've got to be careful. Here, these men are drawn away by these women, the Moabite women. And it goes from harlotry with the women to harlotry in their worship. In verse 2 and 3, it describes it for us. Let's read it again. They invited the people to the sacrifices of their gods. They invited them. Well, come on over. Just come and see it. It's not that big. You don't have to worship. Just come over. And the people ate and bowed down to their gods. It's funny how we can say, hey, we're having an event, guys, and come on out. We're gonna do this thing. We're going to work on something or do some kind of work project, and you'll get some people showing up. So, oh, that's fine. But man, you say, hey, youth ministry, hey, we're gonna have a work project, and there's gonna be pizza for everybody. Oh man, I'm there. It's like you add some food in, man. That's like the magic. That's it. You get everybody there. It's like, oh, there's going to be food. Sure, I'll be there. And here, notice what they did. And the people ate. They went to the sacrifice. It was like a feast. And they go and they eat. And then they find themselves bowing down to their gods. And it's incredible. It's a slippery slope. I've cautioned my own kids, the way that I'm cautioning you right now. You have got to be careful because you can find yourself making a little compromise, and it can go from a compromise to a place of danger. And not just, from one day to the next, but you'll see that it's gradual, but it's a slippery slope. You make one choice here, you make another one here, and before you know it, you can find yourself in a place thinking, you know what, I never thought that I would get here. You can find yourself doing things that you never dreamed that you would do. So you've got to be careful. It goes from hooking up with these women to going to the sacrifices, to eating, to bowing down to their gods, worshiping their gods. And in verse 3, so Israel was joined to Baal of Peor. Who is Baal? That was their god. That was the name of their god, Baal. So now they're joined. They were joined with the Lord. Now they're joined with Baal. And here in verse 3, we have the response from the Lord. And the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. Augustine, the saint from a long time ago, said, idolatry is worshiping anything that ought to be used, or using anything that ought to be worshipped. We've got to be so careful. We move from the harlotry, and we can see the transition there at the end of verse 3, and the anger of the Lord was aroused against Israel. So what is God's response here? Well, you guessed it. Hanging. Pretty harsh. But notice verses 4 and 5. Then the Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and hang the offenders before the Lord out in the sun, that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel. So Moses said to the judges of Israel, every one of you kill his men who were joined to Baal of Peor. This is pretty drastic. I think that we can all agree. This is drastic. This is God saying to Moses, this is not something that Moses dreamed up on his own. He got this from the Lord. Now, we all understand how loving God is, right? How patient he is, how merciful he is. So now we can understand in verse 4 just how drastic this is and how serious God takes this when he says to Moses, take all the leaders of the people, because the leaders have been involved, because they have allowed this kind of activity, and hang the offenders before the Lord out in the sun. So gather up everybody who's been involved in this and hang them. And then this is God speaking. He says, hang them before the Lord out in the sun. Let everybody see it. It doesn't say take them into the forest or into the woods or into some desolate place and get rid of them and don't let anybody see it. This is not like a mafia hit here. Okay? This is not, throw them in the river, with some weights tied to their ankles, and let them just disappear. No, what God's doing is he is purposely saying, I want you to hang them so that everyone can see them, and do it out in the sun, in the daylight. Make sure that everybody can see them, so that everybody understands so that everybody understands the problem here. So that everybody understands how God feels about this. Now, this is pretty serious. This is pretty serious. And we're going to find out why God was so serious about this. It really had to do with his jealousy. It's like jealousy. God was jealous. In fact, he was. And we'll talk about that some more in the next few verses. But this is God's response to it, is a hanging. Let everybody know. Put it out in the sunlight, out in the daylight. Let everybody see it. Let everybody know that this is a serious situation. Now, at that point in verse 6, and you'll notice that in that hanging section, we didn't have any subpoints in there. Short section, but this is part of the judgment here, beginning at verse 6 and down to verse 13, where we see a hero arise. Now, this is oftentimes when we see heroes rise to the top, is during bad situations, during tragedies. And it's no different here. Verse 6, what we see here is a flagrant perversion. Flagrant perversion. Flagrant meaning it's just in your face. It's just out in the open. Verse 6 says, and indeed, one of the children of Israel came. Now, we'll get his name in a little bit. One of the children of Israel came and presented to his brothers a Midianite woman. Now, wait a minute. We started with the Moabite women. Now we're on to the Midianite women? Like, what is this guy? Man, this guy a player? He's just going to all the nations, hooking up with women? Well, it is believed that the Midianites were actually a nomadic people. You know what nomadic means? They were nomads. It means that they traveled around. They didn't necessarily live in one place. So evidently at this point, the Midianites had hooked up with the Moabites. And so there was a large concentration of Midianite people there. And so in the process of hooking up with the Moabite women, this guy finds a Midianite who's still not one of God's people. Okay? So let's see what happens. It says that he came and presented to his brethren a Midianite woman, look at this, in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the children of Israel. Thus, flagrant. That's flagrant perversion. And it says at the end of verse 6, he presented this woman before these people, Moses and all of the children of Israel, who were weeping at the door of the tabernacle of meeting. And it's something that as we're reading this story, we hear all of these crazy things going on, and then we might miss something like that. I want you to understand what Moses was doing during this time. Moses is at the door of the tabernacle, the opening of the tabernacle, weeping before God. And evidently there were others that joined him there. He's there weeping, wanting God to do something, wanting God to act, wanting God to stop it. He's probably also weeping because of the news that he got from God. And God said, I want these people who are part of this flagrant perversion, I want them dead. I want you to take them and hang them. That would not have been a joyful thing for Moses. Even though they're sinning gravely, Moses loved the people. And as they're being judged by the Lord, he does not want them suffering. Now Moses would understand that, well, this is just what has to happen. But he's there weeping before the Lord. What a reaction, what a response on behalf of Moses. This is good stuff. This is sweet stuff. What that little verse there, the last part of that verse, who were weeping at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, gives us a little clue. These were the individuals that were not involved in this act. And they're weeping before the Lord. That's a good response. That's a good thing when I see my friends and or family or my society or my neighborhood or my team, whatever it might be, going astray, living a wicked life or an evil life. I want my heart to be soft like Moses's and not hard and harsh and, yeah, God, just kill them all. I hated them anyways. I don't want to be that way. I want to find my heart like the heart of Moses, weeping, asking for God to respond, weeping on behalf of the people that are destroying themselves. It is really, really easy, isn't it, for us to develop a judgmental heart toward the world. We see all the wickedness taking place. See all that's going on. All of the sin that's being pushed, upon us, and in some cases forced upon people. And it can be easy to grow weary and to grow bitter and to grow hard and say, you know what, God, just kill all these, just get rid of them. And yet we see something sweet here in the midst of all of this mess, the heart of Moses, weeping at the door of the tabernacle of meeting, wanting God to intervene. That's the kind of heart that we need. That's the kind of heart that the church, just in general, worldwide, that's the kind of heart that we need. Because what we don't want is for these people who are living a wicked life to just continue on, die, and go to hell for eternity. No, what we want is for them to be saved, to come to a knowledge of God, and to be on their way to heaven. We want them here worshiping God, the true God, with us, next to us. That's what we want. That's the desire that we should have. And yet too often we, and I'm guilty of it, we find ourselves with a hard heart just saying, oh God, just destroy all these people. We cannot be that way. We cannot be that way. What we need to be is we need to be a light. We need to be a reflection of the Lord and an extension of his arm. And we need to welcome people in. We need to snatch them from the fire. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're here to be. We ought to be inviting sinners into this place. Do you know that your pastor did not get saved till he was 20 years old? When he was your age, he was foul-mouthed and a thief and a liberal. All the things that I was involved in, there are other things that I will not mention. It's quite embarrassing. But I was all of those things. But my dad kept reaching out to me. And when I shut down, he shut his mouth, but kept praying and praying and praying. And he got in the shower one day, taking a shower, thinking about his son not being saved. His wife is saved. His daughters are saved. His father is saved. His stepmom is saved. Everybody's getting saved. But his son won't get saved. He's in the shower thinking about all of this and the weight of it all. And he began to weep, like Moses, to begin to weep. And shortly after that, God began to work in my life in a powerful way. And at the age of 20, I got saved. I got a whole bunch of nastiness underneath my belt. You know what I mean? You know, they say, like, oh, I got a lot of years under my belt or whatever. I got a whole bunch of nastiness under my belt. But God was merciful to me. And there was a church that invited me in, a little tiny Calvary Chapel that invited me in and said, hey, we're glad to have you here. And I'm showing up, with my baggy clothes and, with my earrings in and my nose ring and all, raggedy and like, hey, what's up, whatever. And, I'm showing up and they didn't see any of that stuff. All they saw was a sinner who had repented. All they saw was a sinner saved by grace. And they began to minister to me and love me, draw me in. That's what the world needs. Not judgment. They need love. They need an extended hand saying, hey, we'll help you. You want to get saved? You want to get right? You're tired of living that kind of life? Come on, we'll help. We have got to have the heart of Moses. This hero, let's find out who this hero is in verse 7. As this Israelite brings in this Midianite woman in front of everybody. It says there in verse 7, now when it looks like Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it. When he saw this cat come in with his new Midianite girlfriend and, what are they doing? He rose from among the congregation and took a javelin in his hand. What is about to happen? Is it a track and field contest? What are we doing here? Verse 8, and he went after the man of Israel. Look where the man of Israel was. Into the tent and thrust both of them through. The man of Israel and the woman through her body. So the plague was stopped among the children of Israel. Now we'll talk about that plague in just a minute, but let's talk about what this man Phinehas did. He is overcome. He sees this Israelite coming in with this Midianite woman, and the man and the Midianite woman, they go into a tent. Now, you know, the Bible doesn't have to say what they were doing. We all know what they were doing. I mean, we know the story is telling us that they were, the men were involved in harlotry, prostitution with these women. They were prostituting themselves with the women. And they were worshiping Baal. They were being drawn away from the Lord. And then this guy, this Israelite guy comes through, and he's just cool as a cucumber, you know, and he comes through, is like, hey, check out my Midianite girlfriend, man. We're going into the tent. And they go in there and begin to do their business. And Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest. You get it? He was part of the priestly line. He sees it, and he's overcome. And he picks up a javelin, a spear, and he goes into the tent, and he actually stabs both of them, killing them. He goes through both the man and the woman. How did he go through both the man and woman? Figure it out. The man and the woman were together. Get it? And he killed both of them on the spot. And we go, man, surely this is not right, and God's going to judge Phinehas. Let's find out. It says at the end of verse 8, so the plague was stopped among the children of Israel. Now, the plague, it may mean that there was actually a plague that broke out, which some other verses, scriptures in our Bibles tend to, it seems like there was some kind of plague, but we're not told what the plague was. But the word plague can also be translated slaughter. So it may be talking about an actual plague that broke out on the people and they began to die, or it may just be talking about the fact that they were slaughtering. God said, what did he say? Take the offenders, hang them in the sun. And so it may refer to that, the fact that they were killing hundreds, perhaps thousands, whatever the number was. But either way, people are dying. And look at verse 9. And those who died in the plague were 24,000. 24,000 people were involved in harlotry with the women and harlotry in their worship. Mall mentality, right? We talked about it before. Mall mentality. Well, they're doing it. Everybody's doing it, so I should do it too. And they were caught up in that mall mentality. Hooked up with all of these women and started worshiping another god. Now, we've got flagrant perversion, and then we've got Phinehas. And Phinehas was actually rewarded, as we're going to see here in verses 10 and on. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned back my wrath from the children of Israel, because he was zealous with my zeal among them, so that I did not consume the children of Israel in my zeal. It actually means jealousy. Now for us, that's like, oh, jealousy. You're not supposed to be jealous, man. You are not supposed to be jealous. And now you're telling me this is God speaking, and God is saying that he's jealous? Come on. Jealousy, if you're not aware, is the fear that we will lose something that belongs to us. You're hanging with your crew, your posse, your squad, and all your homies or your girls or whatever, and a new guy comes in, maybe some new guy at school or some new guy at youth group or whatever, and he comes in, and everybody's interested in him, kind of pulling the attention away from you, and you feel like, hey, You know what? Who is this guy? He hasn't been around. Man, I've been here since second grade, and they used to change my diapers here in this church, and now I've been here for a long time, and I got my place and I got my spot, and somebody else comes in, and you begin to get jealous, thinking, oh, but they're taking the attention away from me, or maybe it's another young woman comes in, and she begins to take the attention away from you, and you feel like, hey, I'm threatened here. That's jealousy. Now, is God afraid? I don't think that God is afraid. I would not go that far to say that God was afraid, but God certainly was jealous, or he did not want worship that belonged to him going to Baal. That's how that works. So he says here, as God himself describes what Phinehas did, he says in verse 11, he's turned back my wrath from the children of Israel. How did Phinehas do that? How did Phinehas single-handedly stopped a plague? How did he do that? By picking up a javelin, a spear, and killing those two individuals. When he did that, God evidently, people have a problem with this, but evidently God approved of his action in that moment. And God says, because he was zealous, because Phinehas was jealous with, what does he say? He is zealous with my zeal among them. In other words, he was jealous for God. This young man, Phinehas, only wanted God worshipped. He wanted God to have what was rightly his. God, this is your worship. This man who went into the tent with this Midianite is taking worship away from you. And overcome with that zealousness, that passion, he goes in and he kills these two people. Now, I need you to understand something before you take off out of here and decide that you're going to start killing all the heathens. Cannot do that. I want you to understand that this was a one-time, one-person moment. One-time, one-person event. This is not something that, God says, all right, Phinehas, just go throughout the countryside and start killing everybody. That's not what happened. It was in the moment. And God was in the process of destroying his own people. And Phinehas took that javelin. And by sacrificing those two people, he saved thousands of others. Even after 24,000 had perished. And Phinehas single-handedly stopped it by sacrificing those two. God even says there in verse 11 at the end, so that he stopped it, so that I did not consume the children of Israel in my zeal. In other words, God says, I was the one consuming the people. Yeah, I had Moses and the leaders and whoever else. They were the ones that were killing the people that were involved in this idolatry. He says, but God is admitting, but really it was me behind it. And I was in the process of wiping everyone out. And this young man, Phinehas, stopped it by his action. And so he is rewarded here in verses 12 and 13. And the first thing that he is rewarded with is a covenant of peace. Therefore say, behold, I give to him, to Phinehas, my covenant of peace. God says, okay, I'm just giving you my covenant. This is an agreement. Phinehas didn't even agree, but God's given it to him anyways. That's goodness. He says, hey, I'm giving you, me and you, we're at peace. And then the next thing he does in verse 13 is he gives him a covenant of everlasting priesthood. You will always be involved in the priesthood, he tells him. And it shall be in verse 13 to him and his descendants after him a covenant of an everlasting priesthood. So he gets a covenant of peace and a covenant of priesthood. Because, he tells us here, this is God speaking, because he was zealous for his God and made atonement for the children of Israel. Now again, you need to understand that this is not something that's always sanctioned by God. The believers go out there, just take a javelin and kill people. That's not how we want to normally respond. In this case, in this moment, it was the right response. God approved of it. But that is not a normal thing. We cannot, what's the word I'm looking for? We cannot underemphasize, I guess. No, maybe it's we cannot overemphasize. Cannot overemphasize, I guess. The importance or the way that God can use one individual. One individual. We cannot overemphasize that. Cannot emphasize it enough. That there are times when God is looking for one individual. In the book of Ezekiel, God says the people of the land practice extortion. They commit robbery. They mistreat the poor and needy, denying them justice. So I looked for a man who would stand up, build the wall, stand in the gap on behalf of the people. He was just looking for one man. In that case, God says, I looked for somebody, and then he goes on to say, but I found none. Therefore, I will pour out my wrath and indignation on them. I will consume them with the fire of my anger. He said in that case. But we ought not miss the point that God was looking for one individual. One individual. And how often throughout our Bible stories do we read where God used one man or even one woman to turn the tide, to change history? One individual that was surrendered to the Lord in the midst of the madness, in the midst of the mess. We have people fleeing California as if it were on fire. But we wonder, can God change California? Can he change history? Can he change the tide? Many people say no. Many people are telling us you just need to get out of California as fast as you can. That's it. It's done. It's just going to break off into the ocean. You just got to get out. I'm not leaving unless God tells me to. That's how I operate. But I'm praying that God would change the tide of our society. That God would change the direction. I think he can do it. He did it here. After 24,000 people were gone, slaughtered, wiped out. God stopped it. Through the life of one individual. One individual. This man Phineas, who was willing to stand up. 24,000 people. That tells us that at least 24,000 people were worshiping Baal. And one man decided, hey, no more. Done. Done. And he took action. But it doesn't have to be just a man. Young ladies also. God is looking for an individual who will stand up, stand in the gap on behalf of California. I mean, a lost world. California included. I've not given up hope yet. I have not given up hope. I know everybody's fleeing, everybody's running. It's okay. It's okay. You can go. Okay? Makes the freeway a little less crowded. Not much, but you can go. I'm going to be here as long as God has me here. And I'm just going to keep praying. Lord, change the tide. Change history. I think that God can do it. Do you believe that God can do it? Yeah. And so it says here in verse 14, God tells them to actually harass the people. This is funny. Now the name of the Israelite who was killed, this is the man and the woman, who was killed with the Midianite woman, was Zimri. That was his name, Zimri, the son of Salu, a leader of a father's house among the Simeonites. Simeon, the Simeonites. And the name of the Midianite woman who was killed was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur. He was head of the people of a father's house in Midian. Interesting. You may remember that Moses married a Midianite woman. Anybody remember that? Yeah, Midianite woman. Okay. And in verses 16, 17, and 18, we see revenge here. He says in verse 16, then the Lord spoke to Moses saying, harass the Midianites and attack them. That's God. That's God. It's funny. Harassment, that's like a buzzword in our society today. Harass. They were harassing me. And here's God saying, harass the Midianites. Harass those Midianites and attack them. For they, he says in verse 18, he gives the reason why. For they harassed you with their schemes by which they seduced you in the matter of Peor and the matter of Cosbi, the daughter of a leader of Midian, their sister, who was killed in the day of the plague because of Peor. And so God says, I want you to harass the Midianites. I want you to attack them. Because what they did was wrong. Now, God would do this from time to time. And this is what people have a problem with in the Old Testament. Well, why did God, have these people attacked, or this nation attacked, or, why did he attack those people? Well, God didn't just attack people willy-nilly, oh yeah, I don't like the way they look, just go attack them. Whenever God had a people group attacked, it was a response. Now, we may not always see what the issue is as we're reading through our Bible stories, but you can always go back and read some history. Oh, history, yuck. But some of you like history. Those of us that do not, I actually like history. But if you do not like history, listen, maybe you just need to go back. It's real easy these days. Back in my days, back in the 1900s, we had things called history books. We had things called encyclopedias. Encyclopedia, what is that? We would buy an entire set of encyclopedias, man. Like a 24, 36 volume set. You'd have that in your house on the bookshelf. These huge books filled with all sorts of historical facts. Crazy. Now you just get on your phone and you're like, hey Siri, whatever, tell me about the Midianites or whatever, But you research and you'll find out that many of these people groups were wicked people. Here, God's saying, I want you to take revenge on them for what they have done. They drew you away from me. And so they were to take revenge. Boyce, a pastor and commentator from many years ago, he wrote this: God often allows the ungodly to amass a great wealth to their destruction, sadly. But if you are one with whom God is dealing, in other words, if you're one of God's, and if you put the pursuit of riches or anything else before service to Christ, God may take away those riches and other things until you turn to him. Some years ago, Donald Gray Barnhouse, he was the pastor of 10th Presbyterian Church, again, way back in the olden days in the 1900s. He was counseling, he was counseling a young woman on the sidewalk in front of his church, following one of his evening services. She said she was a Christian and that she wanted to follow Christ, but she wanted to be famous also. Seems reasonable, right? I'll be saved, but I also want to be filthy rich. She wanted to pursue a stage career in New York. After I have made it in the theater, I'll follow Christ completely, she said. Donald Gray Barnhouse took a key out of his pocket and scratched a mark on the top of a post office box, a metal box that was standing there on the corner. And he said to the woman, that is what God will let you do. God will let you scratch the surface of success. He will let you get close enough to the top to know what it is. But he will never let you have it completely, because he will never let one of his children have anything rather than himself. Years later, Barnhouse met the young lady again. And she confessed that this had indeed been her life story. She had dabbled in the stage. Once her picture had been in a national magazine, but she had never quite made it. She told Barnhouse, I can't tell you how many times in my discouragement I have closed my eyes and seen you scratching on that postal box with your key. God let me scratch the edges, but he gave me nothing in place of himself. We've got that guarantee, and it's a good guarantee. That God will not allow his people to stray so far that they're lost. That's what he was doing with the children of Israel. And yes, 24,000 died because God commanded it. But God, in the process of doing that, was saving the majority of his people. He was saving his nation. As he was doing away with those thousands of people, he was also saving thousands of others. But this is the way that God so often works, even in our lives as believers. We may begin to stray, chasing after something that we feel is going to satisfy us and fill us, and this is what I want to do. But, again, as I have warned my own kids over the years, I warn you now, because I love you guys. In fact, you're my favorite service, okay? Don't tell the next service I said that, okay? And if you're in here for the next service, just go along with it, okay? But as I've warned my own kids, you have got to handle the things that God gives you, handle them well. Because if you begin to lose sight of God, because your sight is on the things that you have, that he's given you, you may find that he'll take those things away in order to keep your attention. If you find that you are a superb athlete, I know that we've got many athletes in here, superb, man. I'm going for the pros, the big leagues. As Nacho said, the big leagues. And you feel like, you know what, man, I'm going to make it big. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to come back to this puny little building, show you guys how great I am, how great I became. You've got to be careful. Because it may be that God's not going to allow you to stray so far that you forget him. And you may find that he takes away the abilities that he gave you in the first place. The gifts that he gave you to be able to share with the body of Christ, to be able to share with the world. You have got to be careful. I have seen him do it. I've seen him do it. I've seen the look on the face of a young man who had soccer stardom in his eyes. And I was sitting there with him and his school counselor when the young man said, well, I want to go to a 4-year. I want to play college and then college soccer, and I'd like to go on and be professional. And the counselor, without hesitating, without flinching, said, there's no way you can make it into a 4-year. You don't have the grades. And I saw the young man's face. Every bit of joy that he had was drained. Just like that. He was done. Went to a JC. JC said, no, we don't want you on the team. I was there. I was standing there when he was told. No, we don't need you on the team. Done. What he had been working toward, gone like this. I saw it. Snatched like that. I've seen God do it lots of other times too. Because God is so mean, right? No. Because God loves us desperately. And what will, the path that we're going in and what will draw us away from him, God will take. God will take it. Because he's mean? No. Because he wants us to stay in a place where our heart is tender toward him. So, if you've got some wonderful athletic ability, or if you've got some wonderful mathletic ability, whatever your ability might be, surrender it to the Lord. Let the Lord use it. Say, you know what, God, thank you so much for what you've given me. Use it however you want. You want me to go big? You want me to go pro? You want me to go famous? You want people to buy my jersey with my name on the back? Go for it. If not, give me a job at Stater Brothers. Whatever, doesn't matter. You just use it however you want, God. It's all yours. Father, thank you so much.